Greetings and welcome to the latest edition of the TalkingPointz Chatz Insider Report.
This is April edition.
April edition. This is where we get together and
recorded in May.
the already published version of the Insider Report that Dave has been working on for many years, and I've just started helping him do over the last year or so. And we want to talk about the topics not just amongst the two of us, but amongst other industry experts. And our industry expert today is Irwin Lazar. Irwin, introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Irwin Lazar, President and Principal Analyst at Metrigy. I lead our research coverage around communications, collaboration, compliance, and security.
And you know who Dave and I are, but I'm going to flip this name tag up, which was actually in the April Insider Report. This is a feature which, you know, I've been ragging on Zoom a bit because they don't really talk about the collaboration as much as they talk about AI. This is amazing. This is a broadcast quality graphic that's in from a third-party company in their system, in their app store called VizRT is the company. I've known them for years. We worked on graphics at Times Square together. And look, you can get graphics, you can put logos up, you can put tickers and timers, and this is broadcast quality stuff. And Teams can't do this, and Meet can't do this, and they should be screaming this from the rooftop. So hopefully I'll help them get the word out. But I'm not going to leave it on because you know who I am. There's enough names on the screen already. Dave, why don't you kick us off? Tell us what the key topics were on the April.
Well, the Insider Report in April, or the April Insider Report, I should say, was a long report. I don't remember April being that crazy and insane, but that report came out pretty long, so it must have been a crazy month. And so in this video, we'll go through just a couple of these stories, or more than a couple, and I'd love to get Irwin's take on some of these. I'm going to start off with the EU battery mandate. This story strikes a nerve with many people, but I actually really like the news. So the news basically is the European Union is going to require, starting 2027, that smartphones have replaceable batteries. Irwin, what is your take on this?
I think it's probably not as big an impact as you would think, simply because Apple is largely exempt from it. As my understanding of the news is that if you maintain 80% of battery life after 1,000 cycles, you don't have to have replaceable batteries. So it probably impacts more competitor phones, which I think at this point largely do have replaceable batteries. So I'm not sure there'll be a huge impact from this, especially since it's not forcing Apple to open up their devices to allow people to replace batteries.
Well, I guess it depends on how well you test these and whether you go by vendor claims or not. But regardless of whether Apple gets sucked into it in the first rounds or not, I actually really like this. Before the iPhone, before the current generation of smartphones, I used to always carry spare batteries with my cell phones and just swap them out halfway through the day and no big deal. And it's a feature I really miss, as my current smartphone is dead by the end of the day. And the way you charge it when you're out and about by plugging into a big giant battery or whatever, it's just not very elegant at all. Mr. Danto, what are your thoughts?
Well, you know, I'm with you, Dave. I used to carry spare batteries all the time, but probably about 8 or 10 years ago, I switched over to this kind of stuff, which is the battery case. So I slap one of these things on my device. I carry spare battery cases. Like when I'm going out to a conference all day, I'll put a spare battery case in case the battery case dies. And I have to this day never used it, ever. The only time I've ever switched to the spare battery case is when I go back to the room, my room at night to freshen up, and I'm going to evening events. I'll switch to a fresh battery just to have it, but I actually really didn't even need to do it then. So I'm kind of over prepared. So I don't mind the wait. A lot of people do. A lot of people mind the fact that this is, and the other thing that you have to think about, and this goes directly to what the European Union did the last time about connectors, is when you start adding universality, you add a factor of commerce that didn't exist before. I can now go into any airport store and buy a cable for my phone because they're pretty much all USB-C now, which came out of a ruling for the EU. If the replaceable battery thing happens and it affects Apple, again, with, Irwin said it didn't, but now I can go in and get a charged battery somewhere, at the corner store.
That's a vending machine.
Yeah. So as opposed to having to carry and return a charger or some other piece of device or whatever. So I think the universality is a good thing. And I think, bravo to the European Union for leading a lot of these initiatives, because I think this is important stuff.
I agree.
It is. And there's a theme out of Europe, I think, too. But let's go on another story here. So, another story was that Cisco decided to end of life the Desk Mini. I've the Desk Mini, if you don't recall, is a desktop video device. We could do calls, I could do videos, and it was cute. It was small. It was colorful. Came in bright colors. Um, Seems to me there's a lot of Cisco products in the home, but every time Cisco tries to make a home product, it fails. Mr. Danto?
Every time anybody tries to make a home video product, it fails. There hasn't been a successful one yet, partially because we're all just very happy to use our PCs at home. But the real answer is that nobody's made a good home ecosystem. I loved the Desk Mini. Everybody loved it when you looked at it, but it couldn't tell me who was at the door, and it couldn't tell me the sports scores, and it couldn't play my music for me, as well as do high quality video conferences, as well as answer my extension. Nobody's created that operating system at home. Facebook tried it with the Portal, and the Portal fell apart and didn't work. I have Alexa, Echo, Amazon devices throughout my house. It only didn't go off because I've changed the keyword down here in my office. But the truth of the matter is they're terrible. And now that they've come out with Alexa Plus, it's worse. All of my home integrations didn't work anymore when I switched to Plus. I had to downgrade. So I don't think it's so much the device. They had the Desk Pro, the Desk, and the Desk Mini, and the Desk Mini was the obvious loser here because it needed that ecosystem that no one's created.
Irwin?
Yeah, I think the one real potential use case for it was as a kiosk, somewhere in a virtual receptionist type scenario where you walk into an office or you want to get information or something along those lines. But, that requires software partners that can deliver the functionality that it would need. And, again, you're competing with an iPad, which is kind of the standard device for those scenarios these days.
Yeah, no, Cisco always showed it. It was so colorful and cute, Cisco showed it like in a kitchen or something. And I think Mr. Dano's point was great because if you're going to have a kitchen console like that, you want to be able to watch YouTube channels and you want to be able to do other stuff with it. So, but that device just doesn't really exist other than the iPad or any of the Surface tablets or the not Surface, but tablet type of computers. All right. So, what else did we cover in April? We covered the token prices, AI token prices. There's always been this assumption, and we've been dealing with AI as the headline story on just about every press release for the past. Excuse me, I'm cooking. But AI has been the cover story for the last 3 years or so for just about everything. And there's always this assumption that the cost of AI is going to go down. And I think, and call me crazy, won't be the first, that the cost of AI is actually going to be going up. What are your thoughts, Irwin?
I 100% agree. I think there's been, we've seen it in our research that companies are increasingly concerned about token prices. I think that the big challenge you see now is that the SaaS world is moving from fixed per month, per user billing with a set of features to this AI model where you're paying on a per use basis. And it's really hard to budget for that. We're finding and hearing stories of companies that are blowing through their entire AI budget in 6 months. If the ROI is there, you can justify that additional spend. If it's not, you find that it becomes a bit of a challenge. On the flip side of that, I think that a driver for increasing AI costs will continue to be energy cost, data center cost, and we're seeing a lot of pressure, at least here in the US, a lot of blowback against expansion of AI infrastructure, aka data
Oh,
centers.
come on, Irwin. What do you know about data centers? You don't know anything about data centers.
Yeah, I live in Northern Virginia, the data center capital of the world. We just had a grassroots effort that killed what would have been the largest data center campus in the world. It was about a
Wow.
3-year effort to fight it, and largely due to concerns over water, impact on the electrical grid, the popping these giant data centers next to residential neighborhoods. And it's not just here in Northern Virginia. I think it's happening across the U.S.
Well, but especially in Northern Virginia, that's why I made that comment. There's just a lot of data centers up there. Yeah. Mr. Danto?
I'm going to spare everybody me going down the rabbit hole of my thoughts around AI, but I will just throw out a couple of things around the idea of the cost is still funny money to me, and I still think there's bubble's the wrong word. But just in the last couple of weeks, we've had OpenAI exploring legal action against Apple, which is something we're covering in the May Insider Report. We've had Elon Musk trying to sue, losing his court case and resuing OpenAI. We've had reports that Microsoft Copilot is only being productively used by 3% of paying users. There's a lot of monetization in the entire AI space that I think is amorphous. The cost of tokens, the profits, somebody's going to have to open up the books at some point, and I think it's a house of cards that's going to collapse. So again, I'm going to spare everybody going down the rabbit hole or the rat hole here, but something doesn't smell right, and I want to keep watching it.
Have you heard the term token maxing? I just came across this recently, which is the idea that companies are rating employees based on the amount of tokens they use, which then runs into the issue of, okay, what happens when you can no longer afford to pay for those tokens? So there's that, yin and yang of we really want people to use AI and we're going to monitor their consumption of tokens as a way of hopefully encouraging them to use it and evaluating their use of AI. And then on the
We
flip
really
side,
want you to use it this much, much.
right. And then on the flip side, you say, well, oh no, you stop using it because we can't keep paying for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's something weird here, and if it quacks like a duck and waddles like a duck, let's just see what happens over the next couple of quarters.
Well, the problem for our industry, of course, is that a lot of the particularly the CCaaS but the UCaaS providers are using these AI services often at a flat rate, but their costs are not flat rate, and so they're paying back on the back end usage fees, and so that's the problem with the flat rate per seat model, and that may be another conversation coming up in another insider, but. Now, April had a couple of big events. David, you went to some event, NAB. I don't like the name of that. Why don't you tell us about NAB?
We generally refer to it as the NAB conference. I'm unpacking something as we talk. NAB was an interesting conference. I've been. It was my approximately my fifth decade going to the show. I've been there a lot. And because I started in broadcasting in my career, so I went there for traditional broadcasting, and then it's morphed to AV, it's morphed to, and I've always hated how disjointed that show was, where you would have editing software next to somebody who makes anvil cases, next to somebody who makes lights, next to somebody who builds cameras, and you wander around, you don't know, it's like worse than trying to find pens at a Target. There's nothing organized anywhere. You don't know what's going on. But amazingly, as Dave, as you pointed out astutely many times recently, that the showrooming conferences are starting to kind of wane and die, and there are not a lot of them. The fact that this one is diverse and had a lot of different things going for it is actually what made it a little bit more popular. There was a greater attendance, there was greater interest. So what I always thought was a negative actually turned out to be a positive. One great example that I'll share with everybody is a company that I'm starting to follow called Insta360 made a couple of microphones for content creators. These aren't for broadcasters, and they're using e-paper on the front of the microphones. So you can put your logo on, you can put anything else you want. Now we can tell the difference between the two mics. One's the light one logo, one's the dark logo that's over there.
Can't read the dark one, but the light one looks great. I like the way TalkingPointz fits on there. I don't think Metrigy would fit on there very well. I don't know. What do you think, Irwin?
I don't know. It might. A little smaller name.
My point is, you kind of find the things that you're looking for at that show, and it turned out to be a very good show. I think it's going to be around for a bunch more years. So I enjoy that. Again, visiting with older broadcasters, visiting with people. That company that I showed you that did the logo on screen, VizRT, they're a broadcast graphics company. Old leaders from Chiron are now there, were there and started the company up. But now what is broadcasting? What is collaboration? What is AV? All this stuff is kind of blending and meshing, and we're all broadcasters now. We're all content creators.
Were Cisco and Zoom there? Out of curiosity.
They were in attendance, but they weren't showing. Cisco has had a booth at that show in the past, but they did because I think they're gearing up for Cisco Live and Infocom in June.
I asked that because, as most of our readers know, both Zoom and Cisco have won Emmys for contributions to broadcasting. And so Cisco won one for its contributions to the AV1, and Zoom won one for their broadcast contributions to broadcasting APIs or something like that. I'm not 100% sure what it was. But
It
it
was
seems
some of
like
their
that's the kind of show
ISO
they'd be
recording
at.
capabilities, some of their ISO recording capabilities for broadcasters.
Yeah. Okay. So, but you didn't see them exhibiting there. Um,
I did not.
all
I might have
right.
missed it, but I didn't.
What the other big show took place in April was the Microsoft 365 Community Conference, and Irwin and I were both there. Holy cow! Look at that. So, and honestly, the most interesting thing I found there was Irwin. It was a fantastic conversation. No, it was actually a really good event, and it was great. For me, it was great because. Um, it was a great way for us, and I don't want to speak for Irwin, but he'll speak for himself in a minute, to catch up with Teams because Teams has kind of disappeared from the conferences. Obviously it wasn't at Enterprise Connect, but it doesn't get as much attention at Ignite anymore. And so where do you go for a Teams keynote? And they didn't disappoint. They had a keynote, and Teams was a major a part of that keynote. So it was great to catch up with the Microsoft crowd. What was your take, Irwin?
Yeah, I agree. Notably absent from Enterprise Connect this year, notably absent from Ignite. And this was a good chance for us to catch up and find out not only where they're heading with Teams and also how Teams fits in the larger Microsoft 365 story, especially around Copilot. I thought it was a really interesting event. I thought their messaging around work IQ and leveraging the knowledge that's contained within Microsoft 365, exposing that into Copilot, allowing people to engage with enterprise data within Copilot, I think is certainly plays to their strengths and the data that they own and helps them position more effectively. I guess it was interesting that Google made a very similar announcement at their customer conference that was held the same week, Cloud Next. And then you also still have the follow-on community event, which is outside of Microsoft. Actually, so this one is not an official Microsoft event, although Microsoft was the lead sponsor. But then there's also the Microsoft ComsV Next conference, which is a completely independent event, which is held a few weeks later. So I wonder if all of those are going to merge at some point, because it seems like there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, I have to say,
Yeah,
for somebody who didn't attend, that's a confusing thing. You have the Microsoft conferences that the Microsoft collaboration aren't really at, and then you have the non-Microsoft conference like this one where they were really at it, but then you have the community conferences. You have two of them. You have ComsV Next and Comsverse, which are essentially the same thing, but just in different, geographies. Uh,
yeah.
I'm a little confused as to who does what where.
Yeah, no, I don't. That doesn't bother me. I've been to ComsV Next, and it really is a bunch of the blue shirt guys. What are they called? Microsoft
MVPs,
certified experts. What would you call them?
MVPs.
MVP, yeah, yeah. So it really is a blue shirt event type of thing, and it's really grassroots, and it's nice that Microsoft actually sends people to that every year. So I think that's great that they do that. And I guess what's happened with the 365 Community Conference was it started as a SharePoint conference, it got bigger and bigger, and it got enough people attending it that Microsoft said, okay, we actually need to take a bigger role here. So I think that's all good. Erwin, I'm really glad you mentioned Work IQ because that was one of my biggest takeaways actually from that event. One of the things that we've noticed with AI is it's really hard for these AI for these companies to build any kind of moat. OpenAI was a star, 6 months ago. Now it's Anthropic's a star. Who knows who'll be a star in 6 months from now? And the AI moat is hard to build. And what Microsoft is building is the other side of AI, which is the data. They're building a moat around the data. They're calling it Work IQ, and they're basically trying to collect data from all across 365 because a lot of companies are interfacing to SharePoint, but Microsoft's trying to go a little broader. And they've talked about this for years with with Microsoft Graph and charting and trying to figure out your informal relationships and your org chart and trying to figure out more of yeah, trying to monetize the data, not monetize it, but make it valuable and make that experience better within Microsoft. So I thought Work IQ was actually really interesting, and I thought that was an interesting take on AI. Anything more, Danto, or should we move on to something else?
Well, let's keep going. Let's talk about Neat and the changes that Neat are making and the difference
Yeah.
between the cloud and the edge, which is something that we're going to start talking about quite a bit. Irwin, I don't know, do you agree with?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess in terms of how you're defining that, I think the challenge for companies like Neat and other hardware vendors is how much AI capabilities can they build into hardware to differentiate themselves versus how much are they just sort of dumb endpoints that rely on just sending their audio video into Zoom, Teams, whatever for all the AI add-on capabilities. So yeah, I think that's kind of the overarching story I would say in the space, and certainly where Need, Cisco, Poly, Logi, et cetera, are all trying to figure out what value they can add.
Well,
I
Neat,
think it's a really interesting development around the edge, and this again a little sneak peek into the next insider report for May. But Google just made a bunch of announcements in May, and they're putting a lot more AI capabilities on the cell phone. And really, the logic here is that they don't have any more capacity in the Google data centers. They're fresh out of capacity, fresh out of electricity, fresh out of chips, fresh out of everything. So the best way to innovate is to push stuff to the edge and let us BYO AI, BYO compute, BYO battery or electricity, all that stuff. And so I get it from a Google perspective. I think Neat's perspective is really interesting because they're a device maker. So of course they're going to push it to the edge. Of course they're going to push it to the device. And I think that Neat's kind of ahead of the pack here. I think this is great.
yeah, and they made a number of updates to Neat Pulse that we talked about in the Insider Report, where the idea that if you're going to deploy a fleet of these things, you still need to manage them, and they've really grown the number of people that are using Neat Pulse for their system. So I think we're really, the most fair thing to say is now that they have Java as their CEO, we're all just kind of sitting and waiting for what's the first time he's going to grab the tiller and steer it in one place or another. We kind of know generally, but there hasn't been this big shoe dropping yet, and that's kind of what we're waiting for. Is like, what's this next product under his authority and guidelines? So we're keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, when it becomes his Neat as opposed to when he inherited.
Exactly.
All all right, let's talk a little bit about Starlink. Wasn't a big headline. It was actually kind of hidden, but Starlink announced that they got rid of all their human agents in the call center, and they put in Grok instead, and they called it a virtual call center in a virtual box. It could speak 25 languages. They gave it access to all their tools from troubleshooting, replacement orders, service credits, etc. They did all this stuff, and they said, we got internal data said 70% resolution rate by AI, and it's like, the future. So I'll turn this over to you guys, but I thought it was my basic takeaway is Elon Musk always tells the truth, always is right on target. He just misses the timeline a little bit. And so I think what he's describing is absolutely going to be true sometime, but I just don't know it's true today. Irwin, you have a thought?
Yeah, we've started publishing a consumer AI index, which essentially we go out to hundreds of consumers to try and get their attitudes on AI. We look at it two ways. One is how they use AI internally, and then how do they what is their feeling about using AI to engage with companies that they do business with. And there's still a lot of reluctance on the consumer side. For Starlink, you're probably dealing with a little bit more of a tech savvy customer base, but if they're running into issues, those are likely to be more complex issues. What we find is that people expect to be able to escalate to a human. They expect to be able to easily do so. And if Starlink, and I apologize, I'm not super familiar with the announcement, but if they completely eliminated all their human all their human agents, and you said there's a 70% resolution rate in the
Yeah.
newsletter, what happens with those other 30% of calls? Does that become a huge challenge to find somebody who can handle those? So
Yeah,
yeah, I
that's the
tend to
part
think.
where the future date, the future announcement and the current announcement are a little bit out of sync, and so
Yeah.
yeah, that other
Yeah.
30%,
Anybody
yeah,
who's bragging about even a 90% resolution, and when it it's customer facing customer support has actually never been in a customer facing customer support role. They don't understand that that last 5 or 10% will absolutely kill you. It'll be the people who write in and talk to the CEO. It'll be the people who talk to the chairman. It'll be the people who get people fired. You know, it's the angry 5 or 10% that don't fit into the neat resolution. And if you're not well prepared for it, if you make it too hard to get to an agent or too hard to get to do things that you need to do, that it's absolutely going to be not worth it in the end. It's going to cost you more time and more things. And obviously not Starlink. You know, I was on the phone with the CVS Caremark the other day, just trying to resolve a prescription that I'm dealing with. And you know, on the fourth call, when the second call said you're not allowed to call here as a customer, this is only for doctors, and they hang up on you, you know, and when the automated system, when you're screaming agent agent or you're pressing 0, that's what builds up this anger that, you know, you're going to be pulled. And not everybody's got the clout or the energy to follow that up, but the one person who does, who's in the same country club as the CEO, or who works for a major national publication or whatever, it's just going to take down that house of cards very quickly. So, you know, I think a lot of it is moving too fast. I think it's great for things that are rote. Would you like to know your balance? Would you like to reset your password? You know, those are great things for an automated system to do. But we've been doing that with IVR for years. So,
And the larger issue is, are we, you know, putting so many people out of work that we don't have any customers anymore? There was a paper out of Cornell published in March called the AI layoff trap, which says, you know, look, if this shows that it's successful, the approach of Starlink, and they're saving a ton of money, it's just going to drive their competitors to move in the same direction. And the more people you lay off to automate through AI, the fewer customers you have, and you know, it's not a good future.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think if we even want to just go off on a little bit of a tangent, if you saw, was it Eric Schmidt's? I can't remember what college it was, Arizona State perhaps, where he gave the commencement speech and was almost booed out of the room when he started talking about AI, because students coming out of college are terrified of what AI is doing to them and their futures.
I had lunch with one of those students recently, and she was just like, "I'm never going to use AI. I hate AI." And it's like, you know, you don't really have a choice. You're going to be using it,
Yeah.
but no. That was I'm never going to use it. So this next story, I want to definitely bring in. I want to hear from Irwin on this. Slack is developing some CRM types of features, and I want to hear from Irwin because you're one of the few people I know that are still using Slack. And so are you ready to make Slack your CRM at Metrigy?
Full disclosure, we do use Slack. We do not use it for CRM. No, I think it goes back to a little bit about what we talked about with Work IQ, and the desire for companies that are living in the collaboration space to allow customers to do as much as they can within the app. So if I'm using Slack in a Salesforce environment or even a competitive CRM environment, you know, I want to be able to go in and manipulate and manipulate data. I want to be able to pull up reports. I want to be able to manage, you know, that CRM through the channels where, say, I've got a channel set up for a proposal or a customer, and not have to move back and forth and say, oh, hey, click on this link if you want to go see the record within the CRM. So you know, it's natural that all of these collaboration providers want to become, you know, the place where work gets done, to use the Slack Slack line. And so to build more functionality into it, hopefully gets people to not move out of it.
You know, this is going to be mean, and I'll preface it by saying that this is going to be mean, but this is really how my brain works. I would say when I'm sitting at my desk working, probably 4 or 5 times a week, I look at the name of a company and my brain immediately goes, wow, they're still in business? Really? So Slack, you know, they lost me when their former leader came out on Enterprise Connect in shorts. How many years ago was that? I forget, but
That was a while ago. Yeah.
yeah, that was a while ago. But yeah, it is the only communication channel nowadays that I don't use. And I say that not jokingly. That is, you can reach me on anything. You can even still reach me on Facebook Messenger. So I'm not really going to follow Slack that closely, Dave.
Well, I mean, Slack is still a pretty major player, so
It is. I said it was mean.
Yeah. But But they lost me too. I was a big fan of Slack early in the early days. Once the acquisition happened with Salesforce, I was a little suspicious. Then Stewart left, that made me sad. And then the other founder left, and the guy that put the deal together now he's at an AI company. That was the co-president of Salesforce. He left, and so it's just like it just seems like it got abandoned. But it's nice to see they're still doing some development, I guess. So that's the positive thing here. But the real story to me, and the reason I included it in the Insider Report, is because I think that the whole CRM space is really under a lot of pressure. And so we're going to see a lot of companies moving into CRM. And so it kind of makes sense. I can see why Slack would be adding some CRM type of features. I expect a lot of CCaaS companies to add some CRM type features. And I see a lot of CRM companies pivoting as fast as they can to get out of CRM. And so, Microsoft and Salesforce have both announced CCaaS offerings, and we're going to see just a lot more stuff around. So that whole CRM space is kind of a big ball of clay that everyone has got their hands in trying to reshape right now.
It's I was out at Oracle's Industries Conference a couple of weeks ago, and their story, Oracle has a big CRM play along with
Yep.
their AI infrastructure, and it was really similar to what we heard out of Microsoft as far as WorkIQ. Like, hey, we have all the data in Oracle, not only in CRM but related database applications. We want to be the home for your AI work. We're going to give you the agent interface, and
Yeah.
we'll pull data in from Teams and Slack or whatever else as we need it. So yeah, I think you're seeing these CRM companies trying to reinvent themselves as AI data repositories that they can wrap AI around and allow for automation and analytics and business intelligence.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I had the interview with Jeff Lawson from Twilio that posted in May, and he touched on this because we talked about Salesforce, we talked about CRM, and the basic issue for me is that the CRM companies are trying to preserve their revenue, so they want to add CCaaS to kind of maintain their revenue and grow their revenue. Where companies like Slack, which is of course a division, but Slack or even the CCaaS companies, they're going to add CRM functionality, and their savings, their ROI is that they can get rid of that other CRM, and I think that's a much more powerful story that's going to win out. So I think we're going to see a lot of companies going into that CRM space from different directions. It's kind of interesting. Slack is doing it because they're a CRM company, and so they're competing with themselves. But sometimes you have to do that, and so more power to them, I guess. Um, let's see here. What else we got in April? We got 8x8 came out with their AI studio. Now what's interesting here, because CCAS company coming out with an AI studio is really not even headlines anymore. But what really came out of this is that it's such a native development and kind of a smaller company. And I talked to Sam about this, the CEO at 8x8, and he was talking about how it is just completely exceeding customer expectations. And it sounds like the pace of AI and how quickly things are changing in AI is going to be definitely accelerating the pace of CCaaS and UCaaS. That was my thought on that.
Yeah, I think you nailed it in the Insider Report where you mentioned the key differentiator is it allows anyone to create, to build, test, and deploy AI agents. It's not designed for IT. It's a very conversational style interface. It doesn't require any special skills. So if you say, hey, I want to build an agent to automate X or whatever, it's something that anybody can use. I think that's a key differentiator and definitely lowers the barrier to adoption.
We haven't
Mr.
started calling
Danto,
we haven't started calling it agentic. This is my agentic water bottle.
uh,
I tell it to keep the water inside by keeping it capped, and then when I sit it on the table, it does it all by itself. It has agency keeping the water inside. I think we're losing it here.
You're 6 months away from that water bottle walking across the room and refilling itself and coming back.
Exactly.
yeah, 6 months away.
I think we may be pushing the edge of the envelope in terms of creating agents a little bit beyond where they might be needed or wanted, just to tell the story. And I start feeling about these might just be accessories on the emperor's new clothes. But
Pushing the edge. Are you calling your water bottle an edge device? Okay, never mind. All right, let's move on. So,
more power to 8x8.
The interesting headline in hindsight, Google and RingCentral rediscover Chrome OS. Uh, I'm a big fan of Chrome OS. I use a Chromebook as my primary laptop when I travel. I have a separate laptop when I travel, and so I made it my primary laptop when I travel for at least 2 years, and I'm a big fan of it. I never thought that the Chromebook got the attention it deserved. I thought it was a really good device for students, for contact center agents, for all kinds of use cases. It's interesting hindsight now because in May, which will be in the May Insider, Google has relaunched the Chromebook as the Google Book and announced a whole bunch of new Edge features and more Android features. But I just thought this was a good story because I think it really is a very logical device for contact center agents. Any other thoughts on that one?
I think that Chromebooks are terrific for people that are not comfortable or familiar with managing Windows or Apple or Mac apps. I just got one from my 90-year-old cousin. The whole idea is that there isn't very much that can go wrong with it because it's all in the cloud, and that would work very good for a contact center agent because there isn't a lot of stuff to mess with. You're just dealing with it's essentially a slightly smarter Wise terminal, if I'm dating myself. So. More power.
Absolutely right. That's why I use it as a travel laptop because people drop devices, lose devices, whatever, and I never had to, but I knew I could just go to a Best Buy and get another maybe up and running in a few hours if I had to be. Um, and so, Irwin, you have any thoughts on that one?
I think it's interesting. We talked earlier about pushing compute out to the edge, and we're seeing, AI PCs now become a part of the deployment on that idea that, the AI compute costs are so expensive that we want more pushed out to the edge. And yet here, we're seeing still an opportunity for the opposite, where it's the dumb endpoint with all of the compute back in the cloud. So it'd be interesting to see that, it's not an either or, but a both type future, I think.
Um, One of the biggest announcements Microsoft 365 Community Conference was the Microsoft Teams call delegation feature. This was a slightly different angle to Air. We've seen a lot of companies coming out with Air AI receptionist. This is more of a personal receptionist or personal assistant. Erwin, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think it's the next evolution. Like you mentioned, the AI receptionist from Zoom, RingCentral, et cetera, are more designed for small business, replacement of or more intelligent IVR that captures customers and so you don't turn them away. This is taking that kind of logic and extending it out to individuals. You kind of see a little bit of this already on mobile devices. If I get a call on my iPhone, it doesn't know who it is. It's going to present to me that, do you really want to take this call? Do you want to send it to voicemail? But to be able to automate that now and set policies and rules, is a natural evolution. I think it makes a lot of sense.
I don't like the name Air, but I love it compared to Microsoft Teams call delegation. I think that's a terrible name. Uh, okay, so let's just wrap this up. At the end of the Insider Report every month, we have some good reads. Good reads are basically articles that Mr. Danto and I found that we thought were really interesting, but we had nothing to say about them, so we just refer them off as a curated reading list. And I just want to highlight a couple of them. One of the stories was about the NASA astronauts having trouble with email. I thought that was, I don't know, dystopian
Two
almost.
instances of Outlook, and neither one worked.
Yeah, and so interesting read that the astronauts they sent up into space on that what was
Artemis, too.
Artemis, thank you, Artemis mission. They sent them up with Outlook. What was missing, the previous Artemis mission had WebEx, and I thought, it's like, oh, now they got human because the previous mission didn't have humans, so WebEx was just kind of for testing, and it was like, and I thought it did well, so I was expecting WebEx to be on this mission, but it wasn't there. Instead, they sent Outlook, and it crashed and burned. But what a strange thing to include. I mean, that was the other thing that was interesting was. John Deere was to pay $99 million in a monumental right to repair settlement. I think that was really interesting. The right to repair stuff has been really interesting. It has big implications for smartphones, which have been very hard to repair. A lot of devices, a lot of cars are hard to repair, and people are pushing back, and they're saying, "Hey, I bought this thing. I want to be able to maintain it." And John Deere has been one of the worst about this because farmers cannot update or control or manipulate their equipment without John Deere's approval, and they can't even take it to a local shop. Any comments on that one? Nope.
Well, John Deere has been a company that's at the forefront of technologies. They were a surprising every year darling at CES, talking about how they're changing the way farming is working. So it's interesting that they would be caught up in the same type of controversy that you would have with smartphones or smart devices in the concept of right to repair. You know, if they're going to be on the leading edge of technology, they're going to be on the leading edge of technology issues.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. And it's a different world. And tractors in particular have always been something that you can buy and if you take care of it well, it'll last a long time. And that includes lots of modifications and stuff, and they just couldn't do that anymore. The last thing we put in there in the Goodreads section was actually a series of 3 posts that all took place around the same time that were all kind of a nostalgic history of telecom history. There was one in the Wall Street Journal, from the telegraph to the smartphone, how information technology unified a nation. I thought that was really interesting. There was a Versions podcast that paid a tribute to the AT&T iconic phone, basically the 500, I think it's called, the push button standard analog phone. And Wired had a really interesting article on the undersea cable, the original undersea cable that made global internet possible. Time to say goodbye to it. Ended its lifespan. But we had 14 good reads in the Insider. So even if you don't like the Insider, you might like the stuff that we other people wrote that we highlight there and curate for you.
Well, Dave, the articles on the history of telecom are very important. I know I keep a copy of the original Bell system, one of the original Bell system logos there with a payphone behind me. Not a lot of people know I started my career in 1978 at AT&T corporate headquarters, 195 Broadway in New York City. And after all of these years of being a four-wire guy and having all my butt sets and everything else, this last month, we didn't put in the Insider Report. I don't know why people didn't think it was news. I finally disconnected my landline at home. I was chugging along with it when they retired copper. I felt really bad because that was the most reliable service coming into my house. So I was just on my Verizon FiOS. But then when FiOS, and I was thinking about disconnecting it for like 2 years. Irwin, I think you saw that I had a poll out there a little while ago, and should I keep it if everybody's got their own mobile device? And when the last bill came out that they were actually raising the prices $5 a month, I said, all right, that's it. I mean, $5 is not a make or break, but $30 a month for a line that I can't block a call from Cincinnati. Somehow the Bell system now thinks that plots of land can make phone calls. It was time. And I don't think landlines are going to be around much longer.
Well, you got to pull all that copper out because it's trading really high right now. The price of copper has gone
Oh my
really
God,
high.
I got breadboard panels I can take out of the house. Really good idea. We had ISDN coming in here at one point. That's a lot of wires.
Yeah. Actually, I had a ton of copper when I moved that I took the recycle place and they wouldn't take it, copper cable, and they wouldn't take it. And they wanted me just to throw it away. And I refused to because no, this is copper, man. This is worth something. I'm not going to throw it away. So anyway, that is what we're going to cover in this Insider. It was, I think 14-page report. It covered a lot of stuff. We just scratched the surface. So happy that Irwin could join us on this. We have even covered, Irwin, we have even covered in the past Metrigy headlines sometimes. And so, but we always try to cover the most relevant and important news of the month. Every month comes out the first week of the following month. And so the next Insider Report will come out the first week of June, and it will cover the wonderful month of May. Thanks for
And it's
watching.
halfway done already.
Halfway done already. Thank you for watching.